Hi everybody, my name is Sharon Milliman, and I have had 4 lightning strikes, 4 near-death experiences that I have survived, and so I'm going to tell you about those. Um, the first the first one happened when I was 13, which was around 1975. Um, My mom took me to the Y to teach us how to swim. This was shortly after we moved to West Virginia. And there was a pool in the neighborhood, and she wanted to make sure that we could swim. And while I was there, um, I had an experience. Um, the lifeguard that was my instructor wanted us children, we were the older children, so we were at the 10-foot section of the pool, and he wanted us to dive in head first. I watched all the other kids do it, and I just couldn't do it. I was too scared. I did know how to swim in water where I could stand up if I lost my breath, but when it came to water over my head, it, it wasn't that I forgot just how to swim. I just could not swim in water over my head. But he didn't listen to me when I tried to tell him that I did not feel good about it. I wasn't ready to do it. So he grabbed me around the waist and he said, "You will do this dive or I will throw you in." And that's exactly what he did. He threw me into the water, and when he did that, I panicked and I thrashed around trying to save myself, figure out how to swim real quick. I don't know, but it didn't work, and at times seemed to just stop or get very slow. And the next thing I know, I am sinking to the bottom of the pool. And I could feel my spirit leave my body. At this point, I'm laying on the bottom of the pool, not moving, not breathing, nothing. And I didn't feel, at that point, I did not feel scared. I didn't feel pain. Now, when I was taking in all the water, yes, I was afraid. But by the time I sunk to the bottom and I'm laying on the bottom of the pool under 10 feet of water, and my spirit left my body and was just hovering over top of me. And so I could, my perception changed. I was able to see and hear everything that was going on around the pool. And if you've ever been to the Y, you know that those are great big Olympic-sized pools. My mom was in the balcony at the 3-foot section of the pool, which was on the opposite room of where I was. And as I'm laying on the bottom of the pool, I can see her face as if it was right here in front of my face. And she had the most horror-filled look on her face, and she was screaming and leaning over the banister. And then I heard other children were screaming, people were panicking. It was like chaos outside around the pool. And I heard the woman lifeguard that was taking care of the small children. She said, "Bob, go in and get her." And then my view shifted from her to my instructor, and his face was just like right here in my face. Mind you, I'm still under 10 feet of water. And I could see that his eyes were as big as saucers. They were kind of glazed, and he was in shock. His face was ashen, and he was in shock, and he couldn't move. And all the while, everybody was screaming and yelling and trying to get someone in there to help me. I saw this beautiful, magnificent light just above the water, and I could see the water ripple across the top of the very top of the pool, and the water glistened like diamonds in that beautiful white light. And I was only 13, so I didn't know what that light was. At first, I thought it was a light bulb, and it wasn't a light bulb. It was outside of the pool. And as I progressed, the light started coming down. Or maybe I was going up to it. I don't know. But it looked to me like it was descending towards me. And it was a beautiful, brilliant, yet soft, white light. And it did not hurt my eyes. And what I felt was this calmness, this incredible peace, and love beyond anything I had ever experienced. And it was coming out of that light. And as it got closer and closer to me, I wanted to go with the light. I didn't want to come back. I wanted to go. And then I heard what sounded like a metal door. It clanged or slammed, and it kind of echoed. And I knew at that point my spirit had gone back into my body. It just kind of slammed, bang, right back into my body, because what had happened was there was a lifeguard that was in the middle section of the pool, like the 5-foot section. And he was teaching the middle-aged children. And when he realized my instructor wasn't coming in to get me, he jumped in, swam across to where I was, and he was pulling me out of the water. At the same time, he was trying to do CPR on me. And I could feel the pain. I mean, the second my spirit entered my body, I could feel that pain, the horrific pain in my chest. And, I guess where they press real hard on you. It was painful. He dragged me over to the side of the pool, and I could feel other people pulling me out of the water, and he proceeded to climb out, and he was doing CPR on me. And after several minutes of him doing the CPR, I began to breathe again, and when I did, I was choking up and coughing up tons of water and just having a really difficult time breathing. Well, by that time, the medics came, and they took over, and they were monitoring my breathing and making sure there wasn't water in my lungs and that kind of thing. And by that time, everyone had gathered around me because I was laying on the concrete next to the pool. And people were working on me. And finally, I started breathing normally. And I was told that I could go because I refused to go to the hospital. I was not going to go. And so they released me after watching me for a while. And I was just really frightened. At 13, I had no idea what had happened, that there was a name for what I experienced, and that the white light was an important part of a near-death experience. And also, I had never heard of out of body at all. But when you die, your spirit leaves your body, and sometimes it will hover around, and your senses and your awareness is so heightened you can see, you can hear what you would normally not be able to hear. Um, and so um, I never really discussed with my parents what I saw, what I felt, that huge warm love and that peace that goes beyond human understanding. And I, as I laid in the bottom of the pool, I was warm and cozy and felt protected, and I wasn't scared, and there was no pain. I was not concerned about this body that was laying on the bottom. I was just intrigued that I could hear and see everything going on. Um, so I never really discussed with my parents, especially my mom, because she's the one that took me to swimming lessons. Um, I knew she was terrified by what happened, but I did not know how to articulate what I had seen, what I had felt, what I had experienced. So and she was terrified, so we just didn't talk about it. And I never went back to swimming lessons, and so now I cannot swim, especially in water over my head. I have to use swimmies or a float or hang on to someone, or I'll get in the water and I'll stay in the shallow end where my feet hit the ground. And then I feel safe enough. So that was the first one. The second one happened in 2005. I was around 43 at the time. I am now 62. And what happened with that was I was sitting outside on the back concrete steps under this little roof extension, that came out over the stairs. And I was talking on a cordless phone. It was in the afternoon. At any rate, a sudden storm approached very quickly, and it started to rain, and I heard thunder in the distance, and thinking to myself, okay, I am on a cordless phone. This is not plugged into the wall. I should be safe. Well, I was not safe. And I heard what sounded like a loud crack. And at first I heard thunder in the distance. And then I heard the loud cracking sound. And I realized there is an arch that comes from the ground, and there's a bolt that comes out of the ceiling, and they sort of, or out of the roof, or excuse me, out of the sky, and they kind of meet in the center. But this particular lightning bolt came out of the sky. I saw it. It was a silvery, zigzaggy, awful looking thing. And it came out of the sky, and when it did, it hit my right arm. And it went through my body and leaving the black char marks on the concrete steps where I was sitting, where my feet were, where my rear end was. And it went through me underneath the house, and we had a power transformer just in front of the house, and it blew the transformer to pieces. And the neighborhood was without power for several hours. At any rate, it happened so fast that I didn't have time to consciously process what was going on, what had happened. But for just a moment, I felt this burning, searing, agonizing, horrific pain in my arm and across my chest. If there were any burns left, God healed those when He sent me back. I do not have burns. I have internal I guess, internal injuries or after effects from the lightning. But I did not notice any smell. I didn't notice any burns. But then again, God is capable of healing those things. Um, I went, as I was sitting there, my spirit left my body. I could only feel that pain for just a very short time, and then boom, I'm out of my body. It was like peeling a banana. I just peeled right up out of myself. And I'm standing in the backyard next to this crumpled body that had fallen off the stairs and was laying in the ground, on the ground. And for a moment, I looked at that body and I did not feel any attachment to it at all. It was like, oh, poor thing. And the next thing I know, I'm off and about and I'm exploring and I'm walking, not knowing I'm dead, by the way. I had no idea that I was dead. So I felt great, no pain, no nausea, no nothing. And so what I did was I kind of either floated or walked up the concrete stairs in through the back door, which is where the kitchen was. And I looked at the curtains and I looked around and everything had a burnt gold look to it. And I couldn't make sense of that. And I looked at the lace curtains that I had literally put up there, so I knew what they looked like. And they were over the sink and all along the windows that were on the side of the kitchen. And the curtains that were there were not my curtains. So I was perplexed by this, and so I went into the next room and I looked at the curtains in there, and they were not my curtains, and the furniture was not my furniture. This was furniture that was probably back in the 20s or 30s. And that's not the kind of furniture I had. So I was getting more and more confused. And so I walked through the dining room and into the kitchen. And when I went into the living room, when I went from the kitchen to the dining room to the living room. And I noticed that the furniture in the living room was not my stuff. And so that's about the time I started to really panic. And then I'm hearing this old-time music, this old-time radio show. It was sort of like a talk show. You heard a man talking. I heard music, but this was like very, very old music, like a wind-up radio or something. And I tried to find it, but I couldn't find it. And I knew it wasn't mine because we didn't own anything like that. So we had what we called the parlor. And the parlor, I was standing in the living room, between the living room, open entryway, and then there was the parlor, which had the big grand opening where people come through the front door and you have whatever, hang up their coats or whatever. So I was standing between those two rooms and I was just starting to really flip out, worrying about what in the world is going on. There is nobody in this house, and that was not right. And the curtains and the furniture was not mine, and that wasn't right. And I knew the house was mine. I could get around. The rooms were not different, but the furniture and the furnishings everything else was different. My family wasn't there. I started to panic, and when I did, this huge, loving, formless presence appeared. And this presence was bigger than big, humongous. And I knew that presence was God, and he had come to calm me down and was ready to take me to the next part of the journey. And he did. His love, his acceptance, the peace that I felt was just absolutely incredible, beyond human understanding, beyond what human words can help you to understand. And it was absolutely incredible. It was like he had just wrapped me up and he was carrying me. And when he was doing that, we went sideways. We didn't go up, we didn't go down. We went very, very rapidly through beautiful pink and gold clouds. And that must have been the tunnel experience that everyone talks about, because I could feel that we were being drawn. We were being pulled through this beautiful, beautiful, magnificent pink and gold clouds. And by the time we got to the end of the clouds, there was a magnificent garden. And we stopped moving at the entrance of this garden. And all I had to do was just look into the very beginning of the garden, the very entrance of the garden. And I could see the beauty, the incredible beauty. And I could feel that love and that acceptance that was just, you cannot find words. Human words are very lacking when it comes to describing the magnificence of what I had seen. The colors were so rich and vibrant. The sounds were just magnificent. I heard birds singing. I heard music playing. I heard water rippling in a stream. And it was just magnificent. And so we're still at the entrance, this huge, loving, formless presence that I called God. He and I were at the entrance of the garden, and two beautiful young blonde men appeared, and they stepped forward to greet me. And at first I thought, okay, maybe they're angels, or because they were glowing. They were just literally glowing. They had longer, wavy, curly type hair. Their hair was darker than mine, but it had this color running through it, which gave them an even more ethereal look. In fact, they looked like they had been out on the beach all day long. They were just glowing. And they were wearing a sort of a cream-colored, very expensive linen. The clothes were made out of that kind of cloth. And it seemed vital for them to point out the weave pattern to me, because it was like taking a snapshot of the weave pattern and sticking it right up there in the corner of the room or the area. And it was like right here in my face, and I could see the weave pattern. I noticed it was a herringbone weave, but what was significant about that, I didn't realize until many years later, what it was they were showing me. But at the time, it was like, okay, that's very interesting, and you look just beautiful. But it was like lounge pants, and her shirt was open. They were barefoot. And when they smiled, that's when I recognized who they were. They were my two baby brothers who had died shortly after birth, and I was just a baby myself, so I did not personally know them. But it was like an instant. The moment I thought, oh, are these angels? It was like, boom, no, they're not angels. You know who they are. And when they smiled, they looked exactly like my dad when my dad was a young man. And so I was like, oh my gosh, I know who you are. I know that you are my brothers. You're my baby brothers. And so we had this magnificent family reunion, the hugs and the tears and all of that. It was just beautiful. And anyway, I kept telling them Dad would be so proud of you because you're just so beautiful. And so they looked between late 20s and early 30s. Um, so it was such a beautiful family reunion. So they were with me. So it was now this huge loving presence that was behind me, and my two brothers that were on either side of me. Stephen was on one side, Christopher was on the other. Michael Christopher. That's Michael Christopher. He was on the other side. And they walked with me further into the garden. And I'll just mention a couple of the things that I saw, because there's other videos out there that will tell you what other things I did see. But at any rate, I saw a fieldstone wall that was sort of halfway between the entrance to the garden and what I call the glorious city, which is at the opposite end. And because my senses were so heightened and so aware, I could see very far distances in very great detail, as if it was like right here in my face. And so I'm with my brothers, and we're walking through this magnificent garden. I see this fieldstone wall, and it has beautiful pink roses growing up and over the wall. And I love pink roses, and I love castle walls, and that's what it looked like. So they were walking with me as I was looking around at different things. I saw what looked like a spiritual school, the halls of learning, where people go, and there are a bazillion books from the ceiling to the floor, and people can learn anything they want to learn. And there are mentors and teachers and people there to help people learn, teach people what they need to know to go forward in their spiritual quests. I also saw what looked like a spiritual hospital for people who had died traumatically, because I noticed that heaven was a very gentle place. And so these people that died very quickly and have no idea that they're dead, or they die traumatically, or they die in a dark place, what happens is they will go to this spiritual hospital where they will be attended to by angels and mentors and teachers, people who are specifically trained, and people who find it a calling to serve God that way by helping others. And so we have greeters, we have people to help explain to you what it is you need to know. And there were people there that were there to gently bring to the awareness to these people where they were, what had happened. You're safe here. We'll teach you. You're okay. You're not alone. I saw something called the Hall of Knowledge. And that was the library, is what I call it, a huge library, just total mahogany built shelves and chandeliers and ladders that move all the way around, and you can go from 20 feet in the ceiling all the way to the floor, and it's just piled with books on knowledge and wisdom of anything and everything you could possibly want to know about. I saw behind the spiritual hospital, I saw these magnificent pools of what I call healing water, crystal clear blue water that seemed like it was alive. I saw the glorious city, and I saw that the buildings there were like marble buildings with archways and columns and intricate details carved into the beautiful alabaster. In the center of the glorious city was a round building with a golden dome, and on the outside of the city was a huge golden wall, and it surrounded the city. On the outskirts of the city is where I could see some of these buildings I was describing to you. I saw banquet halls that were just, I mean, breathtaking, absolutely breathtaking. And I learned that you can eat food in heaven, but you don't eat it because you need to sustain your body. You eat it because it brings you joy. And there are people who you gather with your family and your friends here on earth around a table laden with food, and you eat that and it's joyful. And so there's no reason why it can't be that same way in heaven. And no, there are no animals that are killed, because God can create anything with a mere thought. He doesn't have to. There's no killing, there's no sadness, no sickness, no depression, no hurt, nothing like that in heaven. It's all very gentle and very accepting and so loving. It's beyond, it's totally beyond what you can possibly imagine. And I let's see. So I saw many. I saw individual homes that looked different. They were very unique and different for each person that lived in those homes. So anyway, as we're walking around, I'm seeing bits and pieces of things and that I just described to you. And then I saw Jesus coming out of a grove of trees, and he was absolutely breathtaking. And he walked up to me, and when he walked up to me, my two brothers kind of disappeared, and I don't know where they went. But as I back up for a second, I need to let you know that my brothers were the ones that told me I had died, because I did not even know at that point what had happened. Everything happened so quickly. And so I was in the awe factor. So I wasn't able to process in my mind, oh, you were just struck by lightning, your heart stopped, you died. You wandered through your house, kind of lost for a couple minutes, and then God came and got you and took you to heaven. None of that registered in my mind, and I just kind of was like a feather on the breath of God, and I floated along. So Jesus came to me, and he walked me over to a wooded glen, and there was a log laying there. And as I sat down, God was sitting on the other end of the log. And at that point, God and I started talking, and he asked me some very important questions, of which what would you do if it was just me and you? I was like, I don't have a clue what you're saying to me. I had no understanding. And so he asked me again, and I still couldn't answer him. And so he said, get up and come with me. And we got up and we walked further into the wooded glen. And at that point, he waved his hand and he said, what would you do if it was just me and you? And as he waved his hand, the sky opens up, and you see the multicolored gases and the twinkling stars and the spinning planets and the galaxies and all of this. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, that's beautiful. But there's nothing in it. There's no people, no trees, no houses, no cars, no animals, no friends, no family, nothing. It was just all of that. And I looked at God and I said, that's so beautiful, but it's so big. And there's nothing in it but all that. And if it's all that and just me and you would be tired of me after the first 10 minutes. and you wouldn't like me anymore because of all my questions and my chatter. And so he threw his head back and started laughing. And when he did, his eyes just sparkled. Um, and so we went back and we sat down on the log, and he asked me the question again. And basically, I'll speed this up a little bit, but basically, what he was trying to say to me was I was buying into the world. And the answer to the question, what would you do if it was just me and you? The bottom line is, it is just you and God. It is me and God. It is, the next person and God. It's about a relationship that we each have that is very important. And that relationship is, what do we have with God? And he's a gentleman. He will not force himself on you, so he does not make you choose him, but he will hold his hand out to you every single moment of every single day, and all you have to do is take it. And when you do, and you say yes, then that's it. It is just you and God at that point. So anyway, the whole conversation was geared around that. And finally, what he said at the end to me was, I had been told my whole life, you are fat, you are ugly, you are stupid, and you are here to serve me and take care of me, and that's it. That's your sole purpose. And I thought, okay. And so my self-worth was nothing. I had bought into what the world was telling me. And God was saying, it's not about what the world says to you. Don't listen to the world. Listen to me. My opinion of you is what matters. Not your ex-husband, not, not people on the street. What they think of you, that's not important. It's what I think of you. And I don't make mistake. And I don't make junk. And I don't just create something without having a reason. And you are important. And I made you for this important purpose. And you are beloved. And you are not all those things that those people say you are. You are what I say that you are. And he was explaining to me how physical beauty fades over time. That everybody has physical beauty when they're young. But as they get older, that physical beauty will fade. But what's left is a beautiful heart. That's what's more important, is that spirit inside of you, that heart, that compassion, and that love with no strings attached. That's what's important. And he was telling me that I had that. And I didn't need to listen to what people said about my physical body, because I am not my body. I am what I am in here. And this is what you take with you to heaven. Now, when I was in heaven, I had a spiritual body. And it was a much better version of what I have now. But it was, I still looked like me, but younger. I still felt like me. I still thought like me. So my identity was important. I didn't just dissolve into nothing. I was still me. And what I learned was you can't take anything physical with you. So it doesn't matter how much money you have or how big your house is or how many possessions you own. None of that matters, because you can't take it with you. You can't even take a cell phone to take selfies with, which is something I've been asked. So what you have is your memories, your dreams, your ideas, the love of your family, what is in here in your heart is what really matters. And you take all of that with you, and that is part of your identity. And your identity is important. Every single person's identity is important. Even though we are all connected, we are all um, little drops in a great big ocean, but we are all connected. We are, we're all one family, and we all come from one place, and we are all going to go back to the same place. Whatever name you might have for that. So anyway, then I was sent back to my body. There was some more chit chat, but after that, I was sent back to my body. And when I was sent back to my body, it was extremely painful. It was like trying to shove, I don't even know, a boulder into a sock or something. I don't know. It was very painful. And I was confused when I woke up. I was looking around trying to figure where in the world was I. But I had gone back into my body. I had woke up. I did not have burns on me. So the char marks, the lightning went through the bottom of my feet and left char marks on the concrete stairs. But what I do have is, after being in the hospital, the cardiologists and the neurologists found that I had a seizure disorder, left temporal lobe epilepsy, and it was from the lightning. I had do have a right bundle branch block in my heart, which is an electrical glitch that I never had before. So it can make my heart run faster or slower, whatever. I also have something called post-traumatic migraine syndrome, which is horrific migraines that will last. The longest one I ever had lasted 9 days, and I was in the hospital with it. And what happens is this whole side of my head hurts, becomes numb. I can't see out of my eye, and it's just all related to the lightning strikes. My third near-death experience happened in November of 2016. I had an emergency surgery for a bowel blockage. And while I was under the anesthesia, I had aspirated on the breathing tube. I get pretty nauseous and pretty sick with general anesthesia. And apparently I had vomited, and I aspirated on the breathing tube, and I came out of the surgery with double pneumonia. But when this particular instance happened, my spirit left my body. I literally left my body, and I'm hovering over myself at the operating table. The doctors and nurses, they had this powder blue robes on. They had these hats that were powder blue, and the gloves. Everything was powder blue. Their hands were inside my body, and I could see the wet blood on their hands, and I was just kind of, oh, no, I don't want to see this. So I scooted from hovering over myself up into the corner of the room, and I'm sitting there, or what appeared to be sitting in the corner of the room, up towards the ceiling. And so I'm sitting there, and I'm looking out, and I can still see what they're doing because they kept moving around, and I could see myself on the table, and I'm like, I don't care about that. I'm not even interested in that. So there was this beautiful spinning. It was like a upside down whirlpool, and it was going up like this. And it was sparkling, and it was this beautiful rainbow colors, and it was just magnificent. And I thought, oh, I'm just going to go right up there. And I did. I went right up through it. And when I got to the end of it, I'm standing at the golden wall that surrounded the glorious city. And I can see specific landmarks that I recognized from when I was there during my second near-death experience. I saw the fieldstone wall with the roses. I saw exactly where the garden was. So I'm standing at this gigantic brick wall, and it looked like cinder blocks gigantic cinder blocks that were made of pure gold. And I kept thinking, can I jump this wall? Can I walk through this wall? Because I didn't want to come back. I really didn't want to come back. But I couldn't get through that wall. And then it never dawned on me. I noticed that the city gates were open, and they were just a few feet from where I was standing. I heard clanging dishes and people talking, and it sounded like they were getting ready for a welcoming party, or some kind of picnic or something. And so I am standing there, and I'm listening to this real happy music, and people laughing and talking. And then there's this little brown and white, little roly-poly fat beagle puppy. And he's jumping at my feet. He is so adorable. So he wanted me to pet him. So I got down on the ground and I started petting him. I didn't know, I never had a beagle puppy. He was specifically a brown and white beagle puppy. He had a little bit of black on him, but mostly brown and white. And he was fattest little roly-poly thing. And he was so cute. So I'm playing with this little puppy. I didn't know whose puppy it was because I'd never had one. I don't know anybody that did. So that didn't really matter. I was just playing with him. He just wanted attention. Very insistent for attention. And so I'm sitting there playing with him, and I look out towards the direction of the garden where I had been before, which appeared to be way down on the left-hand side as I was facing it. And between the garden and the glorious city was a meadow of tall, beautiful, tall, flowing, almost dancing in the wind grass. And it had wildflowers of every color, pinks and blues and purples and yellows and violets and just, magnificent. But the flowers, and there were colors I didn't even recognize. Same as when I was in the garden. I could not recognize some of the colors. It was just, I didn't know the names of them. And so I am watching this beautiful grass dancing in the breeze. And the smell of the flowers was just, was magnificent. And as I'm playing with this little barky, jumpy dog, I noticed that there are people that are starting to come out of the garden. And then it was like hundreds. It wasn't just a trickle of people. It was just like one after another, after another, after another, or two or three or whatever. And they were just whole families were coming out. And they were walking through the meadow and going into the city gates. And it was beautiful. And there were two Middle Eastern men that came into my view. They had the long white things on their heads and the robes, and they were both just beautiful, and they were talking to each other. And I noticed that every single person had an angel that was taller and more illuminated than the angel was. I mean, the angel was taller and more illuminated than the people were. That's how I could tell the difference between the two. The angels wore white gowns with this light blue sash or whatever. I'm not sure what it's called. And every person had one. So they were talking to each other and laughing, or talking to their angel and laughing. But they were being guided and guarded through the gates. And there was another man that came into my view, and he was a construction worker. He had his hard hat still on. He had tool belt, it was a tool vest. And the tool vest had tools tucked down in it. And he walked past me and he grinned, and it was so sweet. And then I noticed two other people, and one of those people I recognized from some pictures that his mother had showed me. And so when I saw him, I smiled at him and I said, "Oh my goodness, I know you." And he smiled back at me, and he was escorting an older gentleman that I just knew was his father, or a father figure. And he took this older gentleman with him after he smiled at me, and they walked into the glorious city. And so I knew that he was fine. He was just fine. And then there's a cute little beagle puppy wanted and played with some more, so I did that. There was a little bit more to the story, which I can go through later because I'm running out of video. But the one after that was my fourth near-death experience. So I had my drowning, the lightning strike, which was the fourth lightning strike. I had 3 previous, but it was the fourth one that actually caused my second near-death experience. Then we have my third one, where I had aspirated on the breathing tube, took liquid into my lungs, which was where I had vomited. And then the next one, because I have a seizure disorder, I had a particularly bad seizure one day and was taken to the hospital, and they kept me overnight for observation. So that would be December the 16th. And on December the 17th, which was the next morning, I was given a new medication for the seizures, and I had an adverse reaction to it. And what happened was it made me very sleepy, and I laid down in my bed. I was in a fetal position. I laid on the bed and I went to sleep. And the next thing I know, what had happened is I had died from acute respiratory acidosis, or what they call hypoventilation. So what happened was I felt myself rising up out of my body like a helium balloon. It was up, 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 3 ups. So I'm not sure what floor I was on. It could have been I was on the bottom floor and went up 3 stories and out the roof, and what it seemed to be. That's what it seemed to be. And the next thing I know, I'm in this beautiful, dark, very, very dark place. But it was cozy and comfortable. And I was wrapped in what felt like a very soft, thick, velvety black blanket. And I could see myself in the blanket. I could see myself in my bed. I was curled in a fetal position, and inside the blanket, I was in a fetal position. And it gave me the impression that I was like back in the womb, and I was protected in the womb. Um, and I had heard stories about the void. This is the black place that I'm talking about. But there were people that were, and I did notice that there were other souls around me, but I wasn't concerned about them. I was just so comfortable, and I felt so at peace and so much love, because what was standing over me was that humongous, giant, formless, loving presence that I knew was God. And I could hear a conversation, even though I couldn't see because I was in this black, comforting, protective encasement. And so, but what I heard was, you're tired, you're depressed, you've been very sick, and you need to just think about this. Let's not make a hasty decision, because once you leave, you can't go back. So let's just think about this. I will hold you. You can rest in my hands. I will hold you. I am there for you. And so I just laid there. I just rested. I didn't think about it. I just rested. And all of a sudden, I felt it was like someone had turned on a vacuum and was sucking me through the vacuum. And I ended up going down, 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 and I was back in my room. So I'm assuming I made the decision not to leave. Or God made the decision not to leave. So anyway, I am now stuffed back into my body a fourth time, and I am laying there in the bed, and there are doctors. The lights were so brilliant. My eyes felt like they were going to blow up. They were screaming in my ears, and I'm like, oh my God. I just came from this beautiful, peaceful, quiet, dark, comforting place to this room that was loaded with lights and people running around, screaming and yelling and talking to each other, and get me this syringe and that, and do this and do that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, could you please stop? And they had inserted several IVs in both arms. They had taken what is called an articular blood gas test, and my hand was bruised and swollen at the time, and I do not have pictures of it, but it was quite painful. And I'm glad I wasn't there to actually feel what they had done. I looked over through all the screaming and the running around, and I saw my husband, who had come to see me that morning, and he was standing in the door frame of my room with this terrified look on his face. And that's pretty much it. I had never experienced the void. I had heard about the void from other people, and it was kind of frightening to me until I got there. And then I realized, wait a minute, the void is nothing more than the womb of creation. It's the beginning of creation. It's the waiting place that you go, where you decide, are you going to go forward and stay in heaven for a while, or are you going to come back here and try this again, or what is it you're going to do? But this is a discussion between you, your soul, your angels, your guides, God, because ultimately it's God's choice. It's your choice. It's not anyone else's. So I must have made the decision, me and God, me and my soul, must have made that decision that I was going to come back here. And so here I am. But each time I left magnificent, beautiful, peaceful, total acceptance, love, support. It was not only breathtakingly beautiful to see, but it was breathtakingly beautiful and healing to your soul to be there. And every single near-death experience, I believe, is a God thing. God chooses, He picks and chooses who's going to have one. And it's not about popularity. It's not about money. It's not about selling books, because unless you're a New York bestseller, you don't make any money. But in order to spread the news that there is life after this life, and that heaven is real, God is real, Jesus is real, your loved ones are there waiting for you. You are not junk. You are not a mistake. You are not what the world tells you you are. You are so special. You are so intricately important to everything that God creates. So those are my experiences. I've had a few other physical visitations with Jesus and others, and I can talk to you about that at another time. So thank you for your time, and I hope you all have a wonderful evening. Bye-bye.